was a hot lap around Spa in the Porsche 991 2 GT3 R. See, the time here is a 2:18 flat. It's a little bit slower than you might normally expect, but we're simulating a race setup here in the car, trying to make it quick in race conditions with a bit of fuel on board. Definitely capable of 217s in these conditions as well, just not fast enough for it myself. So anyways, that is the time nevertheless, and we can go ahead and take a look at the setup now. So I just completely restarted this on the aggressive preset. I've set this car up before, but I wanted to give it another go and actually go for a stable car, more focused on race conditions rather than just a crazy lap. In qualifying trim and hot lap, this thing is still really fast, but nevertheless focusing on this. So for the tires page here, really the only thing I want to focus on here is the pressures. So you can see here our last hot PSI from the run. It's a little bit all over the place, but we're trying to keep it around 27.5 PSI, both front and rear, really. And then also you can see the tire temperatures. Wouldn't pay too much attention to the temperatures because whenever I stopped, I kind of did a crazy slide, but nevertheless, it is still accurate to look and see the rears will get a lot hotter than the fronts. Just the way it is on the Porsche, there's a lot of load going into the rear of the car, just with where the engine is, and a lot of the big rear wing sitting way out back there too. There's just a ton of load going into the rear tires and not so much on the front. So you can expect no problem really getting temperature into the rears, maybe trouble keeping a little bit of temperature out, and then maybe keeping the fronts in the optimal working range might be a little bit trickier, especially if it's on a cold track, which is kind of why we're running a lot of camber on the front compared to the rear. And if you're running a longer race, a good way to kind of try and keep these in check, it seems, is to lower the camber down even more. Car still handles really good up to right around -2.5 degrees rear camber, just a little bit above that. If you're hanging around there, if you're doing like a really long race and you need to take care of your tires, that's about as low as I would recommend. For our electronics here, I'm running the TC on 2, ABS on 2, ECU map 8, that is the fastest one, and TC2 on 2. These are all, personal preferences. They kind of need to be dictated as well by your track conditions. So this is what was working for me in this run here, but I would probably change it if I was in slightly different conditions. So don't be afraid to play with especially the TC, ABS, and TC2. Brake pad compound front and rear on 2, and we were doing this with 36 liters of fuel from the exit of the pit lane. So the lap you should have seen should have been right around 30 liters of fuel, and then after that, just kind of burning the fuel off. Car really only gets faster in a straight line. Nothing else really changes with the balance of the car, which is pretty much what I was going for. Just increase in speed out of the acceleration zones because you're lugging less weight around, but other than that, the car still feels completely normal. Excuse me, with the suspension side of things, so I actually kept the brake bias stock, as well as the wheel rates. The one major change I made here was to the rear anti-roll bar and knocked that down to 2. It does get a little less rotation out of the rear of the car, but ultimately it felt way less twitchy. So if you want a little bit more rotation, you want a little bit more agileness from the car. It's already pretty good at that, but especially on acceleration where this thing tends to understeer a little bit, you can increase the anti-roll bar a little bit to try and get that back. Just be careful. This car is super twitchy. If you even look at one of the inputs wrong, it can snap and just throw you off the track. So that's why I set it up this way. It's not necessarily the fastest, but something that you can just kind of pound some laps out in, and it should treat you fairly nicely. For the dampers, this is pretty extreme for this car. So realistically, the car is a little bit slow in the straight lines. There's not a whole lot I can do about that with just the nature of the car. I know that doesn't necessarily relate to dampers here, but the car it's just a little bit slow in the straight lines. So if you want to try and take wing out of it to make it faster in the straight lines, you've got a whole lot of issues because the car is incredibly pitch sensitive. So that's what I'm trying to do here with this rebound, just to kind of explain it. The rebound on the rear and the bump on the front, I'm trying to control the pitch of the car a little bit more. So with the rebound on the rear extremely high to try and hold the rear, kind of just freeze it in its right height so it doesn't pitch around. And the same with the front. You can still get a little bit of instability under heavy braking or anything like that in the car. It definitely is still there, but ultimately it's way more stable than it was out of the box, at least for me. If you want to get a little bit more rotation out of it and stuff like that, and you that's what you're going for, you can just knock, for example, the rebound down on the rear of the car. You'll get a little bit more pitch out of the rear, and you'll definitely notice it, at least in my opinion. So either way, you can go with that if you want. The other thing is the fast bump, the fast rebound is pretty aggressive as well on the car, but ultimately it was a bit of a balance for the compression in Eau Rouge, handling that, and then also being a right stiffness basically to handle some of the curbs you need to jump around the track. It is a little bit aggressive on the curbs, but it was a lot better than softer, in my opinion. So onto the aero side of things. So like I said, the car is really pitch sensitive. So any tweaks in the ride height, you'll definitely feel it. But more importantly, it's the rear wing on the car. The rear wing's not what's sensitive. It's just, it definitely feels like it is making the majority of the downforce for the car. So any adjustment to the rear wing is massive, compared to other cars where you could maybe take a click of rear wing or add a click of rear wing. In this car, any addition or subtraction of wing on the car completely changes the balance. So keep that in mind. I wouldn't go any lower on the rear of the car either, as Eau Rouge really turns into a problem. Not Eau Rouge, not only Eau Rouge necessarily, but definitely on the compression, climbing the hill. The car will just want to snap on you, and it requires a lot more work to make anything like that viable, in my opinion. And this was, like I said, the best balance overall for the entire track. So